Oh my god, hey, welcome back to my theatre-themed YouTube channel. My name is Mickey Jo, and I'm obsessed with all things theatre. I am a content creator here on social media, covering West End and Broadway shows, and at the end of this month, I am going to be flying back to New York for an extended trip where I hope to see as many shows as possible. I will be creating vlog content, walking around the streets of Manhattan, seeing theatre. I will be creating a whole bunch of reviews. I will be posting this all over the internet here on YouTube, but also on podcast platforms, on TikTok, on Instagram, on the app formerly known as Twitter, and on Threads. So make sure you are subscribed here and following me on all of those. And usually what I do when I'm about to do a big Broadway trip is I let you know in advance the shows that I am going to be seeing. And I'm going to do that in today's video, but I'm going to do it through the guise of my recommendations for what to see in New York this fall. Now I said Broadway shows, and I've maybe said Broadway shows in the title of this video, but really it's a bit bigger than that, because in New York you have Broadway, you also have off-Broadway, there are a couple of limited concert engagements, and even more that I'm going to be recommending in today's video. And I'm going to be pitching you a large number of shows. There are plays, there are musicals, and I'm aware that for most people, unless you are local or nearby to New York, a trip is not going to be as long as the one that I'm going to be taking. I'm going to be there for like more than 2 weeks. So don't feel as though it is your mission to see every single show I recommend in this video. If I say any that you didn't know about, maybe look into them and see if it might be for you. See if that's something that gets you excited, the premise, some of the music, some of the performers in the show maybe. Look it up for yourselves and see if you want to buy tickets. But there is an awful lot of exciting theatre happening between now and the end of the year. That's the other thing. I'm not going to be talking about shows that are coming in next year. We have a lot of exciting announcements recently. The Picture of Dorian Gray is transferring to New York. Operation Mincemeat is transferring to New York. So I don't want to see comments being like, Mickey, you didn't talk about these shows. We're only talking about between now and the end of 2024, because there's plenty to see until then. So, with no further introduction from me, let's get into it. Here are the shows that I would recommend you see if you are planning a trip to New York and you want to see exciting theatre, the best theatre in town, between now and the end of the year. Actually, just before I start, of course, if you have recommendations of your own, put them in the comments down below. Do you agree with mine? Do you have any other shows that you would like to add? Shows that I might not be aware of? Let us know in the comments. Now let's get into it. So I'm going to start with off-Broadway, and that's for 2 reasons. One, I think off-Broadway always gets very, othered and separated, and I probably have a habit of, putting it last when I'm doing a whole list of things, but also because I think off-Broadway is really exciting right now. Some of the most buzzy, talked about shows are either currently off-Broadway or came from off-Broadway in recent months. Now, this is one I haven't seen yet, but I am so excited to go and see. It is The Big Gay Jamboree. This is from Marla Mindell, who co-created and starred in Titanic. This is another show of her creation. She's starring in it. It is about to open off-Broadway at the time of filming this video. It has been described to me as having a plot that is sort of Schmigadoon-esque, but I have loved her work on social media for years. I trust anything that this woman does. If you enjoyed the comedy stylings of Titanic, then you're probably going to like this one as well. If you're a gay person, I feel like this is for you, or if you're just, a gay adjacent enthusiast. Oh, it's at the Orpheum. This is at the Orpheum Theatre on 2nd Avenue in New York, what I believe is downtown. At the West Side Theatre, not too far from the Midtown Manhattan Theatre District, is Little Shop of Horrors. This off-Broadway revival is a quintessential staging of the show. It's been running for a few years now, with a very exciting rotating cast of star names as Seymour and Audrey, the iconic roles. This is a beloved, brilliant show, and I do think this production is about as perfect a production of Little Shop of Horrors as you are ever going to get. And we don't have that many spooky season appropriate Halloweeny musicals, but Little Shop, with its semi-horror campy vibes, gets most of the way there. And what makes it particularly exciting right now are the new stars who are about to join. I can't even talk about it without getting overwhelmed. Nicholas Christopher, who has been playing such an exciting array of roles recently, who I saw on stage in Sweeney Todd, but who I've been hearing just brilliant things about. But even more personally exciting to me, Sherry Renee Scott. The icon that is Sherry Renee Scott is making her New York musical theatre return. It's been some time. I don't know if she's done a New York musical since, like, Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown more than a decade ago. But Sherry, of course, originated the role of Kathy in the last 5 years off-Broadway, which is about to come back to Broadway. That's good timing from someone who's paying attention. Also, Ursula in The Little Mermaid. There's so many. We could talk through her entire resume. She was in Rent on Broadway in the early days. Like, just very much a queen to me, and especially when she gets to play these campy, vampy roles. Her as Audrey is so perfect. I hadn't even thought of it. I'm so excited that this is going to be happening while I'm in New York, and I can't even contemplate the idea I might get to see her in it. That's just too overwhelmingly exciting to me. I almost don't want to recommend it because there are only so many seats in that theatre and I haven't got tickets yet, so I need to sort that out. Next up, having said that there aren't that many spooky horror musicals, here is another one about to open off-Broadway. This is Teeth. I saw this earlier this year. This was one of the highlights of my April trip, and it is based on the film, the iconic one of the same name, that has the... You know which one I mean. It features a score by Michael R. Jackson of A Strange Loop, but it's very at home with a lot of these movie to musical adaptations like a Mean Girls, like a Legally Blonde. It totally lives in a similar place, but it's more satirical, which is what I love about it, because it's parodying this sort of almost cultist, puritanical, religious youth group where they're all being taught abstinence and chastity by a duplicitous leader. And our heroine is one young girl who is coming to terms with unexpected changes in her body. The whole thing, not unlike Carrie, is like this big metaphor for puberty and adolescence and a sexual awakening, but this also empowers her to take a bite out of local patriarchy. Many of the cast who performed with the show when it was at Playwrights Horizons will be continuing when it transfers to New World stages later this month. Go and see Teeth, do yourself a favour. It is hilarious. The music is killer, the staging is great, but if you do plan to go and see it and you're planning to sit in the first couple of rows, be aware that there is a bloody splash zone, as all the best shows have. Next up, another show that I really loved on a previous trip, The 20-Sided Tavern. So this is currently playing at, stage 42. And if you know anything about Dungeons & Dragons or nothing about Dungeons & Dragons, it sort of doesn't matter, but that's what this is. This is a D&D campaign played and performed live on stage. They have done certain things to theatricalize it a little further. They have condensed the usual, like, turn-based combat sequences, but we are still rolling dice, and the way that they build this show and utilize the audience, and you can be on your phone voting on polls and helping them to achieve tasks. It's heavily improvised, as is the nature of Dungeons & Dragons, but it so naturally and smartly theatricalizes what is already, I think, a very fun game. This is one of those really easy recommendations because I think whoever you are, you're going to have a great time with your group at this show, or you're going to make friends at this show and you're going to come away talking about it, and it puts a huge smile on everyone's face. If you're a family, this is a great show to go and see. If you're doing a date night, this is a great show to go and see. It's just really good fun. And for those of you who are as nerdy about this as I am, the way that they technically actually put this together, I got to go on stage and see the console and the way that they actually do the show. The whole thing is this extraordinarily vast flowchart of possibilities that they are running through. They take suggestions from the audience to create names, to personalize every single show. It's unique. You can go back again and again and again. And that's all because the dice rolls happening on stage, as well as audience interaction, actually affect outcomes, as well as the choices made by performers. It is so brilliant. I would go back, honestly. I may go back, and you should as well. 20-Sided Tavern at stage 42. Fantasy lovers and non-fantasy lovers alike. I promise you it's great fun. Now let's head over to Broadway and let's talk about the new plays that are happening on Broadway. One of those is The Hills of California by Jez Butterworth. If you saw Jerusalem or The Ferryman, these are some of his previous works. This play was just seen in the West End. I have reviewed it here on YouTube, but it's had a little bit of a rewrite, and I saw it twice in the West End. I really enjoyed it. It is now playing at the Broadhurst Theatre in New York. And they have kind of substantially changed the third act. I've been given a couple spoilers about what they've taken out, and it's really substantial. Like, it completely pivots the end of the play. So if you've seen it already, you're going to want to go and see it again. And if you haven't seen it, it's just brilliant character study. It touches on familiar territory to Gypsy, but it's really a very different beast. It's about these four sisters who decades ago had been like trained by their very strong single mother to be a singing group, a very like Andrews Sisters-esque singing group of girls. And most of the play takes place between that time period and then years later when their mother is on her deathbed and they are coming back together in order to get ready for her death, basically. It is a substantial play. It is quite long. Jez Butterworth loves to just colour so much atmosphere and character with these very gradual exposition scenes. I think it's brilliantly written. It's incredibly performed. Many of the same West End principal cast have transferred with the show to Broadway. I'm excited to go and see it. You should see it as well. It's been very well reviewed, actually. I think that's going to be one of the great plays of the year. Then, in a completely different place tonally, you have Oh Mary. This is the creation of the wonderful and ingenious Cole Ascola. This was a huge hit off-Broadway and has now transferred to the Lyceum Theatre, where it's this huge sellout success. If you can get a ticket, get a ticket. It's campy, it's silly. Cole plays Mary Todd Lincoln, the former First Lady, the wife of Abraham Lincoln, but she has been reconceived here as a former cabaret star, alcoholic, prone to these rants of lunacy and frustration and sort of devilish, gleeful nefariousness. And I could talk you through the plot, but honestly that is secondary to just the mood and the vibe of the show. This is this hilarious madcap comedy rooted entirely in queer culture, and we love to see something from that world getting this big mainstream recognition, getting to a point where people are just going to see it on Broadway because they've heard that it's the show to go to and all these celebrities are going to see it. I love this for the show and for Cole Ascola. Conrad Ricamora is in this. If that convinces you to buy a ticket, that convinces me to buy a ticket. It's very wild, it's very zany, it's probably giving you the biggest laughs on Broadway right now. Go and check it out. I guess it's a little like an extended Saturday Night Live sketch is how I could explain this show. The Broadway production of Romeo and Juliet, currently playing at the Circle in the Square Theatre at the time of filming. It has recently started previews. It's very buzzy online. Very, very buzzy. This is going to be selling very well, I think, throughout its run, in no small part due to the lead casting of Rachel Zegler and Kit Connor. She of the West Side Story movie, of the upcoming Snow White adaptation, he of Heartstopper. This is a casting match made in heaven. They are both making their Broadway debuts here. They are both set to be huge stars in the future. You're going to want to go and see them and then say years later, I saw them when they were young doing Romeo and Juliet. Especially if you're a young person, this production seems very deliberately created in order to energize and involve a young audience, like a Gen Z audience. And having recently seen the Jamie Lloyd West End Romeo and Juliet, I'm just excited for one that looks exciting and colourful and vibrant and passionate, where people, you know, say things like they mean it. Tickets are going to be very hard to get for this one. They are doing a rush policy. If you are willing to stand on the street, I'm willing to stand on the street to see Kit Connor on stage. I don't know about you. And what I would say as well is, even if you're someone who does not necessarily love Shakespeare, what I've heard about this production, what I'm seeing about this production, is that it's one of the more accessible ones that you could go for. It is still Shakespeare, bear that in mind. There is some music in it, but you are going for these performances in this production if that is not your thing, if the text is not your thing. Now let's talk about brand new musicals on Broadway. First up is Maybe Happy Ending, and truthfully I do not know that much about this. This is opening at the Belasco Theatre. Official opening night is mid-November. It's starring Darren Criss and Helen J. Shen, both reasons to go and see it. Hugely exciting talents, but it's the director that has me intrigued for this one. Michael Arden is directing, and at this point, anything that Michael Arden is directing, I feel like is going to be of some level of quality. I'm very excited to see what this is. It deals a lot with like semi-futuristic AI, I believe. I think this is the character that Darren Criss plays, and I have friends who have seen this regionally who have very positive things to say about it. Next up, Tammy Faye. I have seen this one. I saw this when it was at the Almeida in London, and I'm a little concerned about the scale of the house it's going to in New York and how marketable this show is, but it really is of some exciting quality. It features a original score by Elton John and Jake Shears of the Sister Sisters. It features a book by James Graham, the brilliant playwright James Graham, and Katie Braben won an Olivier Award, rightfully so, for her staggering performance as Tammy Faye Baker / Tammy Faye Mesner. She is transferring with the show to Broadway. She should not be counted out of the Tony Awards race. She's really great in this. Andrew Rannell starred in the show in London, but Christian Borle is going to be playing that role on Broadway, and Michael Cerveris is also going to be in this. Zubin Vala played the part he played in London. They've shared a lot of parts before because they were both playing the same role in Fun Home, but Zubin won the Olivier Award. Michael is definitely, I think, going to get a nomination for this. So if for no other reason, go and see this to see the amazing performances of Katie, Christian and Michael. I think they are all going to be great in this show. And when you have a new musical with a book written by a brilliant playwright, you get real substance in those moments as well. If you're at all culturally intrigued by a musical about Tammy Faye, it's not all just like rose-tinted kindness to her. It's quite an honest reflection of her life. And if you know nothing about her, she had a really interesting life, so go see it for those reasons as well. Finally, Death Becomes Her is about to open at the Lunt-Fontanne. And listen, we've talked about campy, slightly spooky gothic musicals. This is, of course, based on the iconic film that I haven't seen, starring Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn. I will watch it before I go see the stage musical, but I also don't think that that's necessarily vitally important because it's not like complex intellectual fare. I'm anticipating this being fun and campy. Seeing this, if for no other reason than to see Megan Hilty and Jennifer Samard having a diva off. Like, that's what this is. This obviously is speaking to an enormous quantity of gay men. Let's call a spade a spade. I'm excited to go and see Death Becomes Her. And I don't know if you've seen that little clip they put out of the scene in the song with Megan Hilty taking off that coat and she's wearing the leopard print outfit that matches the leopard print couch. That already, I'm like, I like where your mind is at, people who have made this show. I see the vision and the vision is camp. But also, I don't think that's necessarily the best written song I've ever heard. It has been in my head for weeks. I have rewatched that clip dozens of times and I now need to see the full show. It is not a want, it is a need at this point. Musical revivals opening on Broadway. One of them is already open. It is Once Upon a Mattress. This is at the Hudson Theatre. I saw it earlier this year at New York City Center, where it was part of their Encores season, reviving classic works in a semi-staged concert capacity. That production, starring Sutton Foster and Michael Urie, has now transferred to Broadway. They are joined by Anna Gasteyer. Reason enough to go and see it again if you saw it at Encores. But also, if you're any kind of a Sutton Foster fan, you owe it to yourself to go and see this performance. I'm not sure she has been perfectly cast in every role she has played over the last few years on Broadway, but this is a perfect example of how to use Sutton Foster, because she is in many ways this brilliant follow-up to the likes of Carol Burnett and Mary Tyler Moore, and she gets to showcase that brilliantly in this hysterically funny performance. She's ingeniously funny in it. Really just hysterical. Michael Urie, also brilliant, and I'm sure Anna Gasteyer is as well. They are joined by an exceptional supporting cast, and it's just good, nice vibes. This is very light-hearted. This is a great show to, like, take your parents to if they are visiting town. It's just charming. It's deeply charming. I reviewed it here on my channel earlier this year. You can go and watch that video, but I'm excited to go see it again. Then, next up, we have the ticket that is about to become the hot ticket of all hot tickets. And people were skeptical about how this would be received. And it has still been, you know, throughout its life, a little bit divisive. But I think it's about to become a big hit. I'm talking about Jamie Lloyd's production of Sunset Boulevard. Oh yes, the zeitgeisty one. The one you've likely heard about. The one starring Nicole Scherzinger in a stripped-back production where everyone's wearing black and white modern dress, where there's no stairs, there's no car, there's no turban, but there are cameras and there's a giant screen, and he does a crazy thing at the start of the second act that I'm not going to spoil for you if you haven't seen it. I have talked extensively about this show here on YouTube. I have reviewed it. I have made another video where I talked about it coming to Broadway. I've done a lot of coverage of Sunset Boulevard. It really was this kind of cultural phenomenon within the theatre community when it was here at the Savoy Theatre in the West End. It's about to become a hot ticket on Broadway. See it now. That is my advice. The official opening night is happening late October. I think it's going to get really great reviews. I really do. Like, Cabaret was already not received particularly well by the American critics who went to see it in the West End before it made its way to Broadway. That's the other recent example of a show that was loved in the West End and then went to Broadway and then was received differently. But the American critics who saw Sunset Boulevard at the Savoy loved it. So if that's any indication, it's going to get great reviews. It's going to become a hot ticket. Nicole Scherzinger is really earth-shatteringly powerful and great in it. She throws everything she has at this role. She goes harder than I have ever seen someone go on stage. She is sprinting across that stage. The veins are popping out of her arms. She is beating her chest with this animalistic fury as she is belting out these stratospheric notes of this triumphant Andrew Lloyd Webber score and holding them for crazy long amounts of time. This must be seen to be believed. I think it's Jamie Lloyd's best work on stage. I think it is his magnum opus. The smartness with which he utilizes these cameras and the video design by Nathan Amsey and Joe Ransom, who just won a stage debut award for their work on this show. It's so clever. You have to go see it. You just have to. Also the brilliant talents who went with the show from London, Tom Francis and Grace Hodgett-Young, but in particular David Thaxton, who I think is giving a gloriously subtle performance and is one of my favourite parts of this production. Then finally, we have one of the most anticipated openings of the Broadway season. I'm not seeing it on my next trip because I'm a little bit too early. I will try and see it in the new year. I am talking about Gypsy. A new production of Gypsy starring Audra McDonald. I've already talked about this in multiple videos here on my channel. If you want to go find out more about it, you can go and watch those. They have just announced the wider supporting cast. Danny Burstein is going to be wonderful as Herbie. Joy Woods and Jordan Tyson are going to have these real breakthrough star-making moments, I think, as June and Louise. But Audra doing Gypsy. This is so exciting to me. And true enough, it is going to be a different kind of a Rose to those that we have seen and heard before. People are kind of losing their minds about this, about her like singing it in a different way. To that I say, if you want to hear it sung the way you've always heard it sung, you can stay at home and listen to the cast recording. That's much cheaper. But if you want to go and see what's bound to be an astonishing performance, the most decorated musical theatre performer in Broadway history, the most Tony Award winning actress, playing one of the great roles, playing perhaps the greatest role written for women in musical theatre. That is such a moment. You have to see it. Now, before I come back to Broadway and tell you about the shows that are going to be closing over the next couple months and you need to see them before they close, I'm going to tell you about some kind of miscellaneous options. One of them is basically the reason why I'm doing my trip at this time, because you may be saying, why not just go later if you're going too early for Gypsy? And the reason is ragtime. So you know I said I saw Once Upon a Mattress at New York City Center Encores? New York City Center is also going to be staging a semi-staged concert performance of Ragtime, one of my favourite musicals of all time, with a book by Terence McNally, with a score by Aronson Flaherty. I really think it's one of the musical theatre masterpieces, one of the strongest book musicals ever created. That score, that script, it's remarkable. And this production, the way they have cast it, it's so good. Casey Levy, truly in her mother era, after her wonderful performance in Next to Normal here in London, is going to be playing Mother. Her Back to Before is simply going to change lives. Joshua Henry as Coalhouse. I mean, my God, I have never had the privilege of seeing Joshua Henry on stage before, but I have been enjoying so many of his performances from afar via recordings. Brandon Uranowitz, Tony Award winner Brandon Uranowitz as Tata, is going to be heart-shattering. He is going to be wonderful. Everyone in this cast makes me remarkably excited. Shayna Taub, once again playing Emma Goldman, a role that she has played before in another concert version of the show. Such perfect casting. Ben Levi Ross playing younger brother. My God. Let us not forget Joaquina Calacango. Let us not forget Colin Donnell. If you don't know who any of these people are, you are about to. Ragtime, everyone's going to be talking about it. Everyone is already losing their minds over this. It's going to be beautiful. It's one of the best cast things in the history of things. I'm so excited about it. I'm no longer being coherent, but I'm so excited for Ragtime. Next up, speaking of Casey Levy and her performance in Next to Normal in the West End, another of that show's alumni is going to be seen in New York. I'm talking about rising star British performer Jack Wolf, who also just won a stage debut award for his West End debut in Next to Normal. He is this really remarkable talent, and he is going to be performing at 54 Below. He has 3 dates where he's going to be taking a cabaret performance to 54 Below. If you've never visited this venue, it is beneath Studio 54 in Midtown Manhattan. It's this lovely cabaret space. It's an iconic cabaret space. You can get delicious food, you can get drinks, you can get lovely desserts, and you can hear the beautiful voice of Jack Wolf. He truly has the most wonderful voice, the most expressive, sort of haunting performer. He was so good in Next to Normal. This is going to be an incredibly special evening. Now, as I was looking through the Todaytix app, making sure I was aware of everything that was happening, I noted some National Theatre Live screenings happening in the US, and you can watch Vanya, which is actually heading to New York soon. I'm talking about the one-man version of Uncle Vanya starring Andrew Scott, but you can watch the screened version. You can also watch Dear England, which was this smash hit Olivier Award-winning play by James Graham, that playwright I told you about, who's writing the book for Tammy Faye. Dear England, I think, is less likely to make it to New York. There were rumours at one point that it was trying to, but that seems to have gone a little bit cold. What I will say is, anytime you get the chance to watch a National Theatre Live broadcast, they are so beautifully and clearly done. They're really wonderful live captures of performances. Absolutely go and see them. I have loved every single National Theatre Live broadcast I have ever seen. Finally, for a little bit of a genre sidestep, I'm going to tell you about an opera production. Now, I know very little about opera, but there's a reason this one is exciting to me, and that's because it has been composed by the award-winning composer Jeanine Tesori, who you may know from Thoroughly Modern Millie, more recently from Kimberly Akimbo, from Caroline or Change, from Violet, from Shrek the Musical. All of them great shows. I don't want to hear a word said against any of them. But Jeanine has also worked with opera as a medium before. This is not her first operatic rodeo, and this is happening at the Met, and this is an opera called Grounded. It's based on librettist George Brandt's acclaimed play, and mezzo-soprano Emily D'Angelo, one of opera's most compelling young stars, headlines in the tour de force role of Jess, a hotshot fighter pilot whose unplanned pregnancy takes her out of the cockpit and lands her in Las Vegas, operating a Reaper drone halfway around the world. As she adjusts to this new way of doing battle, she struggles under the pressure to be the perfect soldier, the perfect wife, and the perfect mother, all at the same time. Michael Mayer's high-tech staging, I love Michael Mayer, using a vast array of LED screens, presents a variety of perspectives on the action, including the drone's predatory view from high above. All of which is not things I think of when I think of opera. I very rarely think of new work in opera because I just don't know enough about it. But does that not sound incredibly exciting? I think this is going to be the opera that gets me to somewhere like the Met. Sadly, it's not going to still be running by the time I get there, and I'm going to miss it, which is devastating. But I believe it still has performances for the immediate future. Yeah, October 19th is the very last one. It is also being screened if you are watching this internationally. Look into that as well. But it's contemporary, it's modern dress, it's a really compelling story, and it's Jeanine Tesori. Finally, let's talk about ongoing Broadway shows, as in ones that are not necessarily brand new. Some of these are closing in the next few months. Some of them aren't necessarily, but I just think you should go and see them soon. I think these are the ones you should be prioritizing. First up is The Notebook. This has announced that it's going to be closing in December. It's a really touching, affecting musical adaptation of the Nicholas Sparks novel. The cast are wonderful. You will cry, you will believe in love again. It has some lovely music in the score written by Ingrid Michaelson. It's really beautifully staged. It's a perfect date night show. I've seen it twice on Broadway, and it really captured my heart. I love The Notebook. Again, I've reviewed it here on YouTube if you want to know all of my many thoughts. Next up is one that I haven't reviewed here on YouTube yet, Water for Elephants. And I wasn't explicitly invited to review this show, which is why I didn't, but also because I just felt like I didn't have a very controversial or exciting take on it. I just really enjoyed the show. It beautifully combines this story about a young man running away with the circus with this brilliant acrobatic choreography. It's really impressive what they do on stage. I am, for the most part, a very quiet and reserved audience member, but some of these stunts they pull off had me audibly going, "Oh!" in my seat, because I get a little bit scared, but also very excited by good acrobatics and circus work. There's some lovely puppetry in this show. Of course, there is an elephant that they bring to life on stage, as you would expect. The score is not the most compelling thing, but it tells the story as necessarily as it needs to. Sadly, they have also announced they will close within the next couple of months on Broadway. Go and see it while you can. It currently stars Kyle Selig of Mean Girls. Next up, Stereophonic, which now holds the record for the most Tony Award nominations of all time for a play, is going to be closing in early January. It's really remarkable. It's loosely inspired by Fleetwood Mac. It tells the story of this British-American hybrid music group in the 70s who were on the brink of huge success, but also potentially on the verge of collapse. It's the story of them in the recording studio just trying to put together this one album. It has shades and familiarities of Fleetwood Mac and their Rumours album for sure. But it's just so brilliantly written by David Ajme. The music, composed by Will Butler, is great. The staging is wonderful. It's one of those great fly-on-the-wall plays. The whole thing takes place in the same space, but the notion of time begins to dilate and gets harder to perceive as we are progressing through this band and their growth, and also their growing apart emotionally. I think it's the best play on Broadway right now. I'm encouraging everyone to go and see it, specifically if you're a musicals person who doesn't think that they like plays. Because this one incorporates so much music, I think this is a great gateway play for you. Next up, Cabaret. Now, if you've already seen Cabaret on Broadway and you weren't too sure how you felt about the show, I have heard from multiple people who have been back to see it with the new cast that they felt a little bit differently. And I was a big fan of Eddie Redmayne's performance as the MC. I was never wholeheartedly convinced by Gail Rankin. The new leads are Adam Lambert and Auli'i Cravalho. And I think that this could be really exciting. I'm already hearing from people that this is really exciting, that they are both fantastic in the show. So if you loved it, I feel like you need to go and see it again. If you didn't necessarily love it because of the performances, I feel like you owe it to yourself to go and give the show a second chance. I've seen this revival, specifically this production, more than 10 times between the West End and Broadway. I will be doing my best to try and go see it with the two of them because I'm so intrigued about what their performances are like, but I just think it's very exciting casting. And finally, my final recommendation, and you know, these are just my personal preferences. You can go see The Outsiders, you can go see Hell's Kitchen, you can go see Moulin Rouge. There are a great many other brilliant shows on Broadway. The one I am going to tell you about next is Suffs. I love Suffs. I think particularly it's become really pertinent in this election, and I think sort of scarily the fate of Suffs as a show may be determined by the election results. But I think it's wonderful. I think it's full of so much heart. I think it deserves to be as big as a show like Hamilton. The book, music, and lyrics are all by Shayna Taub, who stars in the show, accompanied by an extraordinary cast. I reviewed it here on YouTube. You can go and listen to my love letter to the show in that video, but I think it's wonderful. I think it's really important to support meaningful shows that are doing important work like this is. And I think everyone should go see this show. It's not just a show for women to go and see and feel empowered by. I think it's a show for people to take their daughters to, their sisters to, their nieces to, their granddaughters to, but also for men to go and see this show as well. I think this show ought to be seen by everyone, and it's also just hugely entertaining as well. It's funny, it's emotive, it's powerful, it features some of the best performances on Broadway right now. Go and see Suffs. And that brings us to the end of my current New York theatre recommendations. There is plenty there to choose from, a lot of different stuff as well. If you're looking for plays, if you're looking for off-Broadway, if you're looking for up-and-coming things, hopefully that has given you a few ideas and inspired you to book a couple of tickets. This is kind of the slower season for New York theatre, and it's really important to support the industry as much as you can and to support new writing and these new shows so that we keep seeing exciting new work like this produced and those artists supported. So go and do that. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video. Comment down below with any other recommendations, or just let me know what you're excited to go and see out of the ones that I shared, and stay tuned because at the end of this month I am getting on a plane. I am coming back to New York. I am so excited to be there and to make so many videos, reviews and vlogs and everything else. Make sure you're subscribed here with the notifications turned on so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Make sure you're following me on all the other social media platforms, and I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm MickeyJoTheatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!